I call Barbara Stewart.
Speaker, New Zealand First will be supporting the Health and Safety Pike River Implementation Bill. We welcome the changes that this bill will actually make to our mining sector. Health and safety is absolutely essential in this particular workplace. New Zealand First agreed with the Royal Commission report on the Pike River tragedy, and we are happy to now see that many of the recommendations have been heard and are being implemented. The Pike River tragedy, as we all know, cannot be blamed on just one factor, but a series of errors. It is very sad that it took this devastating tragedy and 29 lives to make the necessary changes to improve the health and safety regulations in the mining sector. So New Zealand First acknowledges the families and friends of those lost in the Pike River tragedy and all of those other people caught up in this disaster who are dealing with and dealt with this particular tragedy. And of course, we need to acknowledge the two West Coast MPs as well, Honourable Damien O'Connor and Chris Arkinvoll. We are very pleased to see the Workplace New Zealand Agency, WorkSafe New Zealand Agency, that's been created under this particular bill. The intention of this agency is to improve workplace health and safety through the creation of a standalone health and safety agency that will have a dedicated focus on health and safety. We were very impressed when we had a look at Clause 10 of the WorkSafe agency's functions. It appears to be quite a thorough list, and on the Select Committee we will examine these very thoroughly. But we want action with authority when it comes to these particular issues. In 1998, New Zealand First voted for the Ministry of Energy Abolition Amendment No. 2 bill. In doing so, we were advocating for a centralised agency which would be responsible for all things that related to health and safety. We believed then, and we believe now, that a sole government agency ought to have centralised responsibility for ensuring that responsible health and safety practices are undertaken in every workplace in New Zealand. It's been a very unfortunate fact that successive governments either underfunded the Department of Labour, resulting in very few health and safety inspectors, or allowed the Department of Labour to underfund the Mining Inspectorate for which they were responsible. A disaster just waiting to happen. When one goes to work in the morning, there is the inherent expectation that one will return home safely after a day's work. That health and safety requirements in the workplace have been complied with to ensure that this actually happens. The bill also provides amendments to the Health and Safety Act 1992. This change will see new, clear mining regulations, such as processes for better managing hazards, increasing minimum standards, requirements for health and safety standards, and strengthened training and competency requirements. The Royal Commission's focus on this was for a mostly underground mine. However, the changes in this bill will focus on all mining operations due to the hazards that they actually present. New Zealand First has always supported an increase in health and safety regulations for our workers. We're also aware too that the unions have voiced their concerns around this particular issue. During the Select Committee process, we need to review whether or not the union can be involved in checking out the credentials of some of these health and safety inspectors. We look forward to hearing the submissions and many others through the Select Committee process, and we believe that each and every one of them needs to be taken into serious consideration. We support changes to health and safety, and we look forward to others' contributions on this committee. The Royal Commission found that the effectiveness of the Mining Inspectorate had been declining for many years, and by the time of the tragedy, the Department of Labour unfortunately only had 2 mining inspectors. Basically, this was totally insufficient for New Zealand. They were unable to discharge their statutory functions. In short, in whichever form, old or new, the deterioration of the Mine Inspectorate was an inevitable consequence of political neglect after 1998. While undertaking that task, they also decided to integrate the Mine Inspectorate, a leftover aspect of the Ministry of Energy residing in the Ministry of Commerce, into the larger occupational safety and health within the Department of Labour. Questions were raised about this from both sides of the House regarding how the newly transferred Mines Inspectorate would actually be funded. It's also worthy of note that well and truly before the Pike River tragedy, the opposition had raised questions about the adequacy of the Mines Inspectorate. We know that several mines inspectors had lost their jobs in transfers and they were paid out redundancy accordingly. Many of these positions were not replaced and, as outlined in the report, left only 2 inspectors. This in itself was a recipe for disaster. We know, having read through the Royal Commission report, that there were a number of safety issues at Pike River which went totally unaddressed. Failure across a number of government departments and sections of Pike River management contributed to this tragedy. This is a view that we believe is advocated in the Royal Commission report, where they explain the Swiss cheese model of causation, where it's maintained that there needs to be a perfect storm of failings across agencies, coupled with human error, before an accident on this scale can actually occur. We welcomed the Royal Commission's report on this tragedy, and we now welcome this bill to implement changes to improve the sector. They are very much needed. So New Zealand First will be supporting this bill to make these much needed improvements. Safety should never ever be compromised, particularly in the mining industry. This legislation is absolutely essential and we look forward to working on it.
Call Mike Saban.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to take a call on this bill and want to join with other members of